Hey everyone, this is Sandip back with another video. And in today's video, I'm going to talk about the most important thing, which is like how to solve coding problems. I mean, this is one of the topic, which is really difficult in terms of when I talk about the interview, right? So when you're going to go into the interviews of a product company or a big companies like Google, Facebook, Uber, or there are so many different companies, right? They ask, they have this coding problem round, right? And not about big companies, even some of the banks and some of the small companies, they also take the coding problem round. And in that particular interview, you get a problem to solve. And sometimes, I have seen like most of the people, they think like problem solving is a really difficult thing and it requires, some kind of a IQ, or you should be a genius guy, a guy or a girl, then only you can solve the problems. But it doesn't work like that. I can tell you, I'm an average programmer. I'm an average developer. I can tell you honestly. And problem solving is a skill, and any skill can be learned. So similarly, we can learn the problem solving skill also. You don't need to have a good IQ to solve the problems. So problems can be solved using the existing patterns also. So there are some patterns which already exist. You can leverage once you understand, once you learn those patterns, you can leverage those patterns in solving those particular problems. So things get easier as you practice. I can't stress on this point, everything requires practice. If you practice, the more you practice, the more you will build the problem solving skills. So today we are going to do something really practical. We are going to take one problem statement. We are going to solve that problem statement together. So this is a channel, Code with Sandip, right? So you need to code along with me. That is really important. And I'm going to tell you a ninja technique. And that's a 4-step process. I'm calling it a ninja technique to solve a problem. Once you understand all of these steps, you should be able to solve any problem in the world, any coding problem in the world. And maybe you can apply this strategy, some of the points from this strategy, or some of the steps from this strategy to real world also. So let's take a problem statement. So given two arrays, find if they have any common items. Think like you're giving an interview, right? And the interviewer has given you this problem statement. Given two arrays, there are two arrays, two list of items. Find if they have any common items. Right? This can be a real world scenario. I can give you the example. Say suppose you have a grocery list 1 and then you have a grocery list 2, and you want to compare those two grocery lists so that you can come up with a third grocery list with all the common items, right? Or maybe you can come up with a third list with all the items in the list 1 and list 2, but don't duplicate the items. It means combined with common items, right? This can be a real world scenario, and this is an interesting problem. So this is a 4-step process which we are going to use to solve this problem. Given two arrays, find if they have any common items. So the step number 1, and I can tell you, most of the time, as interviewer has told you to solve any problem, the first step which most of the people, most of the developer they take is they directly jump into solving the problem. And if you look at here, that's the step number 3. And this is really important. The step number 1 in an interview, or even if you're solving problem at your home, right, is to understand the problem. First of all, you need to understand the problem. Step 2 is breaking the problem into simple steps. Yes, if you want to eat a big size of a cake, right, you need to break it down into pieces and then you can eat. So breaking the problem into simple steps. Step number 3 is the actual thing where you're going to actually write the code and you're going to solve the problem. And step number 4 is once you have solved the problem, your job is not over. You need to reiterate. You need to look at your code once again, and then you need to refactor that code. So these are 4 steps on a high level, but I have details around those steps. So step 1 has some sub steps or more steps which we are going to follow. So first of all, let's start. So first of all, I'm going to start with the step number one, and I'm going to explain this step in detail. And we are going to solve the problem given two arrays, find the common items together. So step number one, understand the problem. And while understanding the problem, the first step you should take is restate the problem statement in your own words. You can repeat the same statement, whatever interviewer has said, or you can restate the problem in your own words. So I'm going to do that. So let's open a new tab, go to the sources tab, and I'm going to add a new snippet here. So let's say, I'm going to say, I'm going to write a function called find common items. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to write a function related to find common items. But first of all, the step number one, restate the problem statement in your own words. So I'm going to write something like this: given two list of I'm going to say given two list. We need to find, not found, find out common items. So I have just written down the same problem statement, into my own words, or so given two lists. So you can write arrays also, right? We need to find out common items. Simple. You just need to say it, reiterate, or maybe like restate the statement so that the interviewer who is sitting in front of you, he'll also listen. Okay, yeah, this is the problem statement I have given to you. Now let's move on to the next step. That is, what are the inputs? Now this is really important, right? Because I'm going to write a function. We are going to write a function where we need to find out common items from two arrays. So we are going to ask the inputs. Are arrays only going to be inputs, right? So are arrays only be, or maybe I can write something. Arrays will be input. Okay, we will ask, is there a possibility of two strings also? Do we need to compare two strings also? Maybe character by characters. We are asking these questions around arrays will be inputs. Okay, is there any possibility of strings as an input? Again, I'm asking a question like, do you think there will be one array only? In that case, shall I need to do some handling in my function, right? If there are no, if there is one array as an input, right? Shall I return like, please input two arrays to get the result, something like that, some kind of feedback to the users, right? Or we can ask maybe like, can numbers be also input? Numbers be also input? I'm just making it up some of the questions, in related to input, so that interviewer can give us the direction, what exactly he's thinking about that problem statement, what's in his mind, right? What is he expecting out of the solution of this particular problem. So this is about input. We'll move on and we'll talk about what are the outputs. This is also important, right? What will be the output from this program? Outputs, right? So maybe are you expecting return true or false? I mean, we just need to find out whether there are common items or not. If there are common items, we'll return true. If not, we will return false. Or do you think we should return list of common items? Then that can be another expectation, right? List of common items. Or maybe the interviewer is expecting list combine list with list 1 and list 2 along with common items, something like that, right? So there are like multiple possibilities of output coming out of this particular problem statement. So it's always a good idea to discuss that with an interviewer, right? Moving on. Error handling, which is also important, right? You should ask some questions around error handling. Like I said, say suppose a user has passed only one array, what shall I do, right? Maybe if user has passed array with null values, undefined values, do we need to do any error handling around that. So there are many possibilities, and it depends on the problem statement also. What is a problem statement? So these are some of the things which are coming into my mind, and you should ask about it, right? So maybe I'll write it down, error handling. That will create some notes. Error handling, right? So we may ask error handling around input values. Maybe if user is not passing the values, right? So all of these things we can do around the error handling part. Next and last thing is really important, because to think from the perspective of time versus space complexity. Because when we are talking about big O, when we are solving any algorithm or any problem, right, time and space complexity or a big O plays a really important role. So maybe like take the example here, right? I'm going to write some inputs here. Maybe let's start with like A, G. Oh my God, I don't know why it is suggesting something. A, G, X. So this might be one of the input, right? One of the input, and okay, so I forgot to put double quotes here. And there might be like I can have T, U, and X, something like this. Maybe this is the input, right? Two arrays I have, right? Now, this is really important from the time perspective. Say, suppose we have such kind of input where we have number of items in array 1 and array 2 is around 1000, maybe, like not more than 1000. So in that case, the performance doesn't matter much. We can use two for loops. I'm just jumping to the solution and we can solve this particular problem. But as the input increases, maybe this data is large enough, like maybe the records, maybe the data is in lakhs or maybe in millions, right? In that case, using for loop around, or nested for loop can be a problem, right? Because it's going to slow down the solution. So it's really important you ask questions around time. I mean, what is important? Time is performance is important, or a space is important. How large can the input be, right? And if the interviewer says, okay, the input might be, I don't think that there will be more than 100 items, to compare, then the job is really easy, right? You don't need to think from the perspective of time or performance. And if the interviewer says, okay, the space will be a problem, then when we are writing this function, we need to take care of creating all the variables and how much space those variables are going to take. So this point is really important, and you should talk about time versus space complexity. Let's move on to the step number 2, where we are going to breaking the problem into simple steps. So we are going to write down the approach in plain English. That is the first thing, right? Write down the brute force approach or a naive approach until you have the efficient solution. Discuss the solution with an interviewer. So I think I started this series, data structures and algorithm, and there is one video related to Big O which I have posted, and I have talked about this particular topic. Now, one problem statement can have multiple solutions. How can we decide which solution is the best solution? Because we have to take that decision, right? Because there are multiple solutions. So when you're sitting in an interview, there is a possibility, right? There is a possibility you might not get the best solution for that particular problem statement at that time. So I would suggest you start with a brute force or a naive or a beginner approach first, and then you can discuss the similar solution with an interview. That's why I'm talking, instead of solving the problem first, we are discussing the problem. This is how I'm going to solve the problem, right? So this step where we are just going to write down in plain English what are the steps I'm going to follow. So let's do this, and I'm going to continue, and I'm going to tell you. So maybe like I'm just going to write a function, find. So I'm not writing the actual function, I'm just creating the body of the function. Find common items will be our function, and it's going to take list 1 as an input and list 2 as another input, right? And inside that, we are going to write our solution, steps to the solution. So as I said, right, if you're not getting the efficient solution, write the beginner one, the brute force one, the easy one, and discuss that solution with the interviewer. If he or she agrees, right, okay, this is okay, we can move ahead with this particular solution. then there is no problem. And if he expects better solution, different solution, we can have that too. So for the time being, I'm considering he will be happy with a naive solution or a brute force solution. So what will be the brute force or a naive solution? Write down all the steps. So find common items is going to have two different lists, right? So we are going to compare first list with the second list. That comparison we need to do. So we will compare the first item with all the items in the second list. We'll compare the second item with all the items in the second list. We'll compare the third item with all the items in the second list. This is how the comparison is going to happen. So I need to run two different for loops, the nested for loops. So we will write loop through. So I'm not writing the actual solution. I'm just writing the steps. Loop through first list of items. Then inside that loop, we are going to loop through second list of items. Okay. And then we are going to do the comparison, right? Compare the items. I'm going to say just compare the items. If found, return true. I mean, if we have found the item, say if item found, I'll write something like that. If item found, return true. And I'm going to copy this statement. And if item not found, return false. So these are some of the naive, very beginner kind of steps I have written to solve this particular problem. Now, you have told the interviewer, right? These are the steps I'm going to follow. So I think at least I would say, partially you have solved the problem here only. You just need to write down the syntax to solve this particular problem. So there we are going to move into the step number 3, where we are actually going to solve the problem and we are actually going to write the code. So write down the actual solution, write down the simple solution first, the naive solution, which I have suggested here. So let's do that. Now we'll follow these steps. This will become really easy. Now we're going to loop through the first list of items, right? So I'm going to create a loop here. First loop, let I is equals to 0, I less than, we are going to loop through list 1 dot length and I plus plus. Okay, so I've created a for loop around first list. Inside that, we are going to loop through the second list. So I'm going to create another loop, let j. This time I'm going to use j because I have already used I. J less than list 2 dot length. Okay. And j plus plus. So what's going on here, right? So I'm going to take the list 1. So I'm going to call this function, okay, with some values here. So let's call this function with some values. I'm going to say I have apple. We are going to take good example. We have apple. Then maybe I'll go with banana. And finally, we're going to have, so I'm just making the list of grocery items, right? So this is my first list. And maybe I'll have another list of items where I'm going to have sugar, then maybe rice, and then maybe I'm going to have a milk. Now, there is something common in this input, right? And that is milk, right? So how this program is going to run? I just want to explain. So we are going to loop through the first list of item and second list of item. So what is going to happen? First of all, the loop will start. Okay, so list 1. So list 1, 0, what we have? We have apple. So first of all, we'll get apple here, right? Apple. And then I'm going to come to this loop, right? J is equals to 0. So this is list 2. So I'm going to get sugar. I'm just going to put the comment here. Then we will have the item as sugar. So we are going to compare if list 1 I is equals to list 2 j. Okay, so we are comparing if apple is equals to sugar. And if it is true, we're going to return true because we got the item, right? So loop through the second list of item. I should have put these comments here actually. I'll put it here and then we are comparing the items, right? So let's do that. And then if the item found will return true. So this is what we are doing here. If we don't get the items right, item actually, we are going to return false. So I'm going to finally return false here. So what's going on in this problem, in this program now? So first of all, we got the apple, right? So we are comparing apple with sugar because first time j is equals to 0. That's why we are getting sugar. Obviously, apple I is not equals to sugar. So apple is not equals to sugar. So it will not return true. It will loop. First of all, it will finish the inner loop. Okay. And then it will move to the outer loop. So now the value of j will become 1. We are going to get rice here, right? So now apple is not equals to rice. So again, j will increment to 2. So now 2 is 0, 1, 2. Now finally, we are going to compare apple with milk. So apple is not equals to milk. So first time inside this loop, we haven't got the value. So it will go to the outer loop, the for loop, where we are going to increment the value of I to 1. And this time, instead of apple, we are going to have banana. Now we are going to compare banana with j. Is again, the inner loop will start from 0. So j equals to 0. So at list to j, we have sugar. So we are going to compare banana with sugar. Obviously, they're not equal. So I did a mistake in the spelling actually. So banana is not equals to sugar. Again, the value of j will increment. So j is equals to 1 now. It's going to compare with the rice. Banana is not equals to rice. It's going to compare with milk. Banana is not equals to milk. Again, this loop is over, right? We didn't find the item. We'll move on to the outer loop again, and this time the j will become 2, and this time we will compare milk with again j equals to 0, j will reset to 0, we'll compare with sugar. So milk is not equals to sugar, so j will increment to 1, so we'll get rice. Correct, we'll get rice. Now milk is not equals to rice, it will increment to 2, and then finally we'll get milk. Now milk is equals to milk, we'll get the value of return true. So let's run this program. Hopefully I've explained it well. So maybe I'm going to write test, and we are going to just see what is the value of test. What is the output of test? So I'm going to console.log test here. Save and let's run it. So I'm going to just see that we are getting true because milk is present in the list of items. Now let me change this particular value maybe from milk to a cake. And now I'm going to run my program for the negative test cases. We are getting false. Because now the items in the first list is different from the items in the second list. Maybe we can put some value like 1 here and test, or maybe 1 as a number and test. Okay, this is returning false. Maybe I'll change this to 1. And now this is working fine. So we can check with the numbers also. So it's working with string. It's working with numbers also. So far, so good. So you have seen, right? We have followed step number 1 where we have discussed, we had an interaction with the interviewer. We had a good communication with the interviewer where we have restated the problem. We have talked about input, talked about outputs, error handling, type versus space complexity. We have broken down our problem into simple plain English statement. We have discussed about the naive, the brute force approach with an interviewer, and we have discussed about the solution, right? And we have finally solved the problem. We have written down the actual solution. We have written down the simple solution first. Now, maybe if there is a time, right, you can go to the step number 4. You can now reiterate and refactor your code where, you can look back and see the scope of improvement in terms of performance, results, and code refactoring. You can check for the code quality, right, readability, best practices from the language perspective. So all of these things you can do. Say suppose you have time, and if the interviewer asks, okay, maybe now we are in the step number 4, right? And maybe the interviewer asks, can you come up with a performant solution for this particular problem, right? Maybe I have like the input will be large. How you're going to solve this particular problem? So this is a place, where you can reiterate and refactor your code. But if interviewer was not agreeing to the solution when, we have broken down the problem into simple step in plain English, and he said, no, I need the performant approach only, we would have taken only performant approach at that time. Now let's reiterate and refactor this code. I'll solve this problem again. I'm going to write another function where, we are going to solve this problem in a performant way. And we are going to use some of the good patterns to solve this particular problem. So I'm going to write. So let's talk before I write that problem, let's talk about the BIGO for this particular solution. So BIGO for this particular solution will be around O of A into B, or maybe not banana. I can say it will be O of N square. Why? Because we have nested do. And if there are like so many items, obviously this solution is not going to work. So we need a performance solution for this. So let's write that performance solution where, we will try to reduce this big O. We'll bring it down at least to N. So I'm going to copy this function from here. And I'm just going to write it here. So we're going to write another function, find common items 1, which is going to take list 1 and list 2 as an input. And again, we are going to follow the same steps. So step 1 we already did, right? Now we are going to write down the approach in plain English. Okay, and we are going to discuss the solution with an interviewer because we have taken the brute force approach, right? So let's do that. So in this case, right, in the second problem, there is a way to solve this problem. First of all, we'll create a map object. Create a map object. So in JavaScript, we can create object with name value pairs. So what I'm going to do, for example, right, we have this input, right? The first input. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to loop through the first array. I'm going to loop through apple, banana, and milk. And I'm going to put that string as a key into this object. And then I'm going to assign a value of true to it. So in the first step, we are creating the object. In the second step, we will loop through the first list. Okay. And okay, we'll loop through the first list. We'll create map of keys of items in the first array. So what we are going to do, actually, we are going to do something like this. I'm just going to put a comment. So obviously we are going to create an object, and inside that object, I'm going to create something like this. I'll have an apple and I'm going to say apple is true. Okay. I'm going to have banana as a key. So I'm looping, right? I'm looping and I'm taking all the values from the array and I'm going to say banana as true. Then I'm going to loop again. Take the next value and I'm going to say milk is true. So I'm going to create this map, right, of keys of this particular array. And next, I'm going to loop through the second list of items. That's what we are going to do. And we are going to compare the item with the keys in the map object. So what are we going to do actually? Okay, so I'm going to take sugar. So like take the example here. I'm going to take sugar from the second list, right? And I'm going to compare, I'm going to see whether sugar exists in this particular map, right? So you see sugar here, no. So it's going to return false because sugar doesn't exist. Or maybe like, I'll go with the example, I'll check for the rice. Now rice doesn't exist. If you see here, apple, banana, milk. Then I'm going to check for the milk, and milk as a key exists, right? Apple, banana, and then milk. Milk is true. So it's going to return true, right? So this kind of comparison. So compare the items with the keys in the map. If item found, we will return true. And I'm going to copy this again. If item not found, return false. See that? You're going to write down all of these steps in plain English. You're going to discuss these steps with the interviewer, and he will be happy. Even if, like, say, suppose the time is over, the interview time is over, and you haven't actually written the code or solution, but partially you have written in English, plain English, right? What will be the solution to the problem? And there is a possibility interviewer might be happy. Now you're using some kind of different approach, to solve this problem, and he might get convinced. Okay, at least you haven't written the code, that's the second part, but at least you know the solution, right? The efficient solution to this particular problem, and you might clear the interview also, right? So again, I'll come back to my steps, the ninja technique, right? So we have broken down our problem statement into plain English, into simple steps. Now let's solve the problem. So now solving the problem will become really easy because we just need to follow these steps. So create a map object. So I'm going to create a map object. I'm just going to give it a name of map. Loop through the first list. Okay, that's easy, right? I know how to write for loop. So I'm going to write that let I is equals to 0, I less than list 1 dot length, and I plus plus. So I'm going to loop through my first list, and inside my map, I'm going to say list 1 I, right? So I'm taking apple, right? So I'm going to put these inputs here, right? Maybe I'll put my inputs here. So I'm going to take apple. So map apple, list 1 I is apple, and I'm going to say true. Similarly, what's going to happen, it's going to take banana, it's going to take milk, and it's going to set the value as true. Now, I think let's run this program. I'm going to just put 1 here, and I'm going to run this program. We're not going to test anything for now. I'm just going to comment this code, and let's run it and see what we are getting in the map. So I'm going to log my map here, console.log the map object. Okay, see that? So whatever number of items we have in the first array, right? First list, we got the name value, we got the map created. Apple true, banana true, and milk true. Now let's move on to the next step. I'm going to remove this console.log. I'm going to remove this also to run it later on. Create a map of keys of items in the first array. So we already did that, right? So I'm going to just cut this from here and put it here. So this is the step. Okay, we got something like this. I'm going to remove this now. Loop through the second list of items. Let's follow that step. So I know how to write for loop. So again, I'm going to say let. Now this time I'm going to use j is equals to 0. J is less than list 2.length gth length and j plus plus. Okay. Next is compare items with the keys in the map object. So we're going to do the comparison. So I'm going to take if, so comparison we do using some Boolean statements, right? So I'm going to say, I'm going to take the list 2 and j. So what it is going to return me. So list 2, initially the value of j will be 0. So list 2, 0, I'm going to get, let's copy this from here. And I'm going to keep it here. Okay, so I'm going to get sugar, right? So I'm just checking. Now I got the sugar, right? So, but I need to see whether sugar is true inside my map object. And so I'm going to say map and this array syntax. See that? So when I say map, list 2j will return me sugar. So this is how it is working, right? Map. And first of all, I'm going to get sugar. So I'm checking map sugar, but actually this is going to convert into something like this, map dot sugar. So I want the value of map dot sugar. And I know the map dot sugar value doesn't exist here. There's no sugar, right? So it is going to return me false. So we're going to check whether it is true. And if it is true, we're going to return true. Now let's do the comparison. Let's run through the loop again. So now the value of j will become 1, right? So j will become 1. So list2 of 1 will return rice. And that will convert into map of rice. And map.rice is, I don't have map.rice here, right? So again, j will increment to 1. Now the value of j is 2. We will look for list2 2, and list2 2 is milk. And it will ask for map of milk. And map.milk is there, right? Map.milk is there and it is true. So it's going to return true here. So we have the common item, right? Else, so let's move this step here, this comparison. We already did that. And I'm going to cut it from here, this one, and we are returning true here, right? So I'm just going to put that comment here, that step. And finally, say suppose we didn't find the item, we're going to return the false. Let's test our performance solution, right? So I'm going to just clear my console. See that? We're getting true as the output. Now I'm going to change this to cake and I'm going to run. We're getting false. Let's change it to number also, right? Maybe I'll change it to 1, save. Wow, it's working. 1 again, save. See that? I'm getting true. So this solution, is a performance solution. Why? Because we are running one loop here and we are running another loop here. So actually the big O of this particular problem, I would say, would be around something like O of A plus B. And I would say it will come down to O of N, not like N square. Right? Because I'm not running loop inside a loop, right? I'm running two separate loop. So it's obviously it is better than, I can't say it is O of N always. Maybe it is more than that. But at least we are better than N square. I can say at least we are better than N square. So you see that, we have reiterated, right? Again, if you want to follow the step 4, again, reiterate and refactor. So we came up with a performance solution, a better solution, and maybe you want to improve this problem. Maybe, right, like if you see here, right, this list1 maybe I can take this out from here and I can create another variable here. Say suppose const item is equals to this one. And then maybe I can use that item here. Similarly, I can do the same thing here. I can take this list2j from here. I can create the const item. I'm going to put that. And instead of map list j, I can use item. So you can always do such kind of a refactoring. Maybe if you don't need to compare it with true, because it's obviously going to return true. So all of these changes, and you can make this program look better, readable, following the good code practices. So there is always a scope of improving the program. We can't say always like this is the final version. There might be a better version of this particular program which might exist. So it depends. Okay, so I think I took a long time, but I wanted to tell you how to solve the coding problem, using this ninja technique. So I'm going to give you a quick recap of what we did in this video, right? So given a problem statement, first of all, you need to understand the problem, restate the problem statement in your own words, talk about the inputs and outputs, talk about the error handling and time versus space complexity. Step 2 would be breaking the problem into simple steps, where write down the approach in plain English, write down the brute force approach until you have the efficient solution, and discuss the solution with an interviewer. Third is actually you're going to solve the problem where you are going to write down the code, the actual solution, and write down the simple solution first. And finally, fourth step, you're going to reiterate and refactor. So you're going to look back into your code, see the scope of improvement in terms of performance, result, code refactoring, etc. You can check for the code quality, readability, and best practices. So I think that's it for this video. I think I've told you the ninja technique, how to solve coding problems, and that might make you feel better instead of feeling bad. And now you'll get the confidence, to solve the coding problems by yourself, and you will not be afraid about those interview questions, the coding problems questions. And I just want to say all the best for all your interviews if you have watched this video until end, right? So I'm going to stop here. I'm going to see you in the next video where I'll come back with a new topic and new video. Until then, you take care and goodbye, and thanks for watching this video.